you're probably checking your email all the time.
That's right.
I actually do a lot of my writing on an AlphaSmart. You know what an AlphaSmart is? And for our audience members who don't know what an AlphaSmart is, it's a keyboard emulator. It's a little thing that's just a keyboard that stores text, and it runs on about 700 hours on 3 AA batteries.
Yes.
And then later you go and you can plug it into any program that accepts text and hit send, and it dumps it all in. And
it can go anywhere.
It can go anywhere, and you don't have to boot it up, and you don't have to shut it down, and you don't have to create files, or there's no formatting on it or anything. But what I like about it is I can't do anything else but write on it.
Right, that's right.
You know, I can't check my email, I can't check the internet, I can't play a computer game, not that I ever do that during a work day, you know. And also, my background is in technical writing. You know, I only decided to be a novelist 5 years ago. And technical writers don't do rough drafts.
Right.
You know, you might do an outline first, but your draft is your draft. You've got some assistant that checks it for grammar and spelling, but you don't ever write a rough draft. Well, if you can't write a rough draft, you're never going to get a novel done. Right. If you try to make every sentence perfect before you go on to the next one, you're still going to be on chapter 3 a year and a half from now. Right. As in the words of the immortal Nora Roberts, you cannot edit a blank page.
A blank page, right.
The only thing you can't fix.
Right.
And well, and the way it is with Nikoo and me, when we write, we decided early on we were not going to get attached to unrevised text.
Not too attached.
Not too attached, that's right. But it was, I mean, that was really one of the major things that kind of helped us to move forward, because you weren't worrying so much about creating something that was perfect before your partner looked at it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and as I said, being a technical writer made it hard for me to write a draft. It did make it easy for me to cut things, because when you work in, you know, where you're writing a big proposal or a big technical document, and you work on it for 6 months, and it's 500 pages long, and it weighs 50 pounds, and you take it into the meeting, the executives then say, yeah, cut that, this won't work, hate that, change this, throw this out. And if you take any of that stuff personally, you're going to be, you know, in the ladies' room crying. Right. So when my editor says, I don't like this, I say, okay.
You know, editors really are the partners.
They're experts. This is you.
Sure.
They know what they're doing. You have to trust them. You know, and I hear some authors say that get to the point where they are no longer edited. And I'm like, well, God bless you, but I really like somebody else taking a look at my work.
We do too.
I love my editor. It's like, you hear that, Leslie? I love you.
She's a good one.
But you know, Leslie Wanger is my editor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. She's a very admiring. Also, I've dealt with her through breast cancer, because she's a breast cancer survivor.
Oh, yes.
And I'm a breast cancer survivor. And 5 years ago, even though that we never worked together with her, she heard about that I was going through breast cancer treatments, and she made a point of contacting me and emailing me and calling me and seeking me out, and I thought that was just, I think, the world of her.
She's a wonderful person.
She is.
She's a wonderful editor, and
yes, she is.
I like to joke that Leslie wrote the book on how to write a book, because when I decided to first decided to write, I went down to Borders, and I had an idea, and I thought it might be a romance, and I bought Writing the Romance Novel for Dummies by this person I'd never heard of, Leslie Wanger. And it's just coincidental that years later she ended up, you know, acquiring my books and becoming my editor. Yeah. But she's actually going to appear as a guest on a future episode.
Oh, nice.
And so we'll be seeing, the audience will be meeting Leslie Wanger very soon.
And just ask her about her tattoo.
Leslie has, okay, I will be, in fact, I'll be sending her an email when I get home saying, so.
About the tattoo that she got right after she was diagnosed with breast cancer. It's very entertaining, actually.
I have not been made aware of Leslie's tattoo.
We'll tell anyone's secrets.
She'll tell anyone's secrets. Oh, good, this is good to know.
Yeah.
This is excellent to know. I'm wondering if I can, we're coming near the end of our show, if I could get you to read an excerpt from your most recent book, the book that the January 2009 release that I am so enjoying, The Puppet Master.
All right. A cold, wet droplet hit him squarely in the center of the forehead, startling him awake. His head felt as if it was about to burst, and a dark haze surrounded him. He blinked and decided the problem was with his eyes. His vision was blurred, his hands were tied behind his back, and his left arm was asleep. It took some effort to get his fingers moving. As he worked them, pain shot up his arms from gashes on his wrists, from the cords that bound him. He rolled and tried to wipe his face on the filthy fragment of carpet they'd dumped him on. Dried, crusted blood came away from on the rough wool. He knew the blood was from several wounds on his head. They seemed to enjoy using his head as a punching bag. He blinked a few times to clear his vision. Another drop of cold water hit him, this time in the shoulder. He was in a very small room, an unused storeroom perhaps. Ancient rusted pipes emerged from one wall, ran the length of the dark ceiling, and disappeared into the opposite wall. A dim bulb hanging at the end of a thin wire was the only source of light in the room. There were no windows. Nathan didn't know how many days he'd been there. His memory was foggy, and he only had a vague recollection of a man asking him the same questions over and over. The one question that seemed to tip them over the edge every time had to do with his name. They didn't like his answer for some reason. He kept telling them he was Nathan Galvin and that he was a tourist. That answer seemed to draw the most cracks to the head. He vaguely recalled in an insane moment being tempted to tell them he was Hillary Clinton. But he hadn't known what that would do to them. The other questions Nathan couldn't really remember. He'd been hit too hard and too often in the head. He looked around the room. The piece of rug he slept on smelled of urine and vomit, but it was the only thing that separated him from the concrete floor, stained with dark spots. Nathan didn't want to think about what had caused the stains. There was a table near the door. A wooden folding chair sat in the middle of the floor. He remembered sitting on that chair as they continued to question him. He pushed himself to a sitting position. His head hurt so much that he thought it might split in half. It took a few moments to stop the room from spinning. He tried to think back to his last clear memory. He was supposed to swap a flash drive with a local contact. Simple, he'd been told. He'd asked what was on the drive. The answer had been vague as well. Names, just names. He'd asked what was on the drive he was getting from his contact. Again, just names. Nathan felt cheated. Actually, he felt stupid for not asking more questions. His parents had raised an analytical son. He had always been encouraged to go through life with his eyes open, to experience things firsthand, not to accept anything at face value. All their advice had been thrown out the window the moment Nathan had accepted this job, a job that his parents knew nothing of. As far as they were concerned, he was spending the year following his graduation from college traveling, seeing the world. He was in serious trouble, maybe even a dead man, and they wouldn't even know where to look for him.
Poor Nathan. Nathan was the character that the book opened with, so I'm very invested in Nathan and what happens to him, and I don't want to know. Don't tell me. Okay. Well, thank you so very much for coming. If our audience members would like to find out more about you or where they can meet you or any upcoming appearances you might have, they can go to your website, which is www.jancoffey.com.
Yes.
And if you or anyone you know would like to appear on a future episode of So Many Books, go to my website, www.toniandrews.com, and click on the Contact Me link and send me an email. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your books, and I'll get back in touch with you. And thanks so very much for joining us on So Many Books.